Next Gen
Next
fam.
Gen, what's up, team? Happy Tuesday afternoon. How's everybody doing out there?
Squad, DG and I, we're here in the studio. All right, we're in the lab. We'll give you a quick little showdown. We're filming some dope stuff that's going down for some extra special momentum. If you're in the know, you're in the know. If you're not in the know, well, you're not in the know. But regardless, you joined us because we have a beast, Josh Linkner, on Momentum Audio today. We're pumped to have him here. Shout out to all who are going to join us live. Jake Asman, Lafazan Beard. It's coming together, man. I'm doing my best. Shout out Jake Asman, one of the earliest moderators, interviewed Tobias Harris at Next Gen. It was his big breakthrough. Now he's way too famous for us.
Two shout outs, Eliza and Jared, two of the best
Beasts.
videographers in the game. They're making it happen. We appreciate you tuning in for this epic session. We're going to get the guest on. You're going to see his setup. It is unbelievable. Absolutely.
Next Gen for life. You know it, my man. All right, y'all. We want to bring on to the stage a 5-time tech entrepreneur. He's grown and sold multiple companies in aggregate value in the hundreds of millions. He wrote 2 best-selling books. He's a venture capitalist, a keynote speaker. His goal, his mission is to help really everyday people become innovators and become everyday innovators. He has a great framework. We're going to dive into it all. With that, Jenna, let's bring on Josh Linkner to the Momentum Audio stage. Josh, what's going on, my man?
Hey, guys. Great to be with you. Thank you so much.
Josh, we appreciate you joining us here today. We're going to dive in with the heavy hitters off the bat. So you ready for us? You ready to get after it?
I'm ready, man. I'm from Detroit, Michigan, so I know you're in New York City, but we're ready. We're ready to tangle.
Good, because that is exactly where we're going. Josh, $1 million question. New York pizza, Detroit style pizza. What's your pick, man?
All right, so here's the thing. I love like finer things in life and all that, but my number one, I just love pizza. Like pizza in all shapes and sizes. I don't discriminate. It's all good. But head-to-head combat, Detroit pizza all the way. No offense to New York. It's awesome. And so is Neapolitan. But Detroit pizza is like half the thickness of Chicago deep dish. Cheese goes all the way to the edge. You can't beat it. You got to try it. Detroit style pizza.
Next Gen fan, we're gonna do a live taste test. We're gonna put Josh's hypothesis to the test. Josh, it is very clear from reading your bio, from doing the prep, reading your books, that you've been an entrepreneur even before you were born. Like you were an entrepreneur from the second you came out, even if we didn't have the words. So I want to zoom into the beginning of your career. You started your first business selling fireworks. It's 1981. Take us back to that time in your life. Obviously, you go on to do more formal businesses, more on the right side of the law, but clearly you were having that spark of innovation, of curiosity. So take us back. Who was Josh in that time period, and what were you really thinking about?
Yeah, so as mentioned, I was born in the city of Detroit and not the suburbs, the city. And at 11 years old, I had this idea for a business. And they basically, the juvenile delinquent around the block from me was getting illegal fireworks somehow. And I would go down in his basement and I'd assemble a package of, firecrackers and bottle rockets. And I'd put them in my school bag, go to my middle school and sell them. And it was a pretty good gig. Like I had healthy profit margins. I had distribution dialed in. I had strong supply chain with my supplier, but I blew it on a regulatory issue. Basically, my treasury, I was a treasury / regulatory. I crumpled up my profits, my $20 bills, stuck them in my underwear drawer. And the regulators here, my mom, one day opens up the drawer. She's like, where did you get all this money from? And so the jig was up. I was busted. My punishment, by the way, is I had to call up all my friends' parents and say, hello, Mrs. Jones, my name is Josh Linkner, and I sold illegal fireworks to your son. As you can imagine, I had no friends for years.
Oh my, Josh, we appreciate that. A lesson for all next-gen entrepreneurs: do not overlook governance. You gotta pay attention to the regulatory bodies. We appreciate you sharing that story. I wanna play it out from there, Josh, because at the time, you are young, you're having fun, you're exploring passions, you're starting to play around with the musician side of the world. When you think back to the start of your entrepreneurial journey, maybe the official start, let's say, the legal side of it, what comes to mind that you finally realized, I think I'm an entrepreneur. I think this thing is for me. That's my passion in life.
Well, yeah, I started playing music earlier than that. I started playing music at 8, and I've been playing now jazz guitar for 40 years, believe it or not. And I just love the art form. And jazz to me, it's dangerous, it's messy, it's creative. If you and I were playing the same song every night for 10 years in a row, every night would be different because it's this improvisational art form. And I just fell in love with that. I liked creating stuff out of nothing. I liked the messiness of it. I liked having to screw things up and then course correct. And so I've really been a jazz musician for the last 40 years. First playing music, I would sneak into clubs in Detroit and they'd let me sit in. Then I put myself through college playing music. But at age 20, I was sort of bit by the entrepreneur bug. And in a more legal manner, I was kind of a tech nerd and I started a tech company at age 20. But honestly, that to me is still playing jazz. And now having launched and sold my own companies and investing in about 100 other startups, I still play jazz. And basically jazz to me is the right metaphor, which is we're dealing with changing circumstances. We're adapting to new conditions. We're evolving, we're creating, we're flowing. And I use different instruments these days, even though I still play guitar, but I still am a jazz musician and always have been. So that to me has been my true love, and it always has been and will be, is harnessing human creativity. And now I get the great privilege of writing about this topic and helping others do the same.
And Josh, we're pumped to dive into that. You have so many lessons that we learned from your former book, from the book that's coming out. I want to dive in. But for Dylan and I, something that we're constantly talking about is that when we were getting started, exposure was something that was really critical for us. We didn't get, once we knew that this entrepreneurship world was available, we were all in diving head first. The only thing we were saying is, I wish somebody told me about this before. Why did it take me so long to realize that there were a group of crazy people out there trying to have fun, change the world, make money, help people? So what was the support system, the community that you started to pull together, given that you didn't grow up before, let's say you start, I mean, you were always an entrepreneur, but you grew up in the city. Who are the friends or the community of support that you started yourself with to immerse yourself and get that exposure?
I think, the biggest influences were other jazz musicians, other musicians. And I had a grandmother that was, she passed in 1986, but she just played a huge role in my life of kind of encouraging me to do what's possible. And my parents were divorced. I got kind of lost in the shuffle, frankly. And she was sort of this constant pushing me and challenging me. So that was really meaningful. But, it's funny. I grew up because of my situation, and I'm not in any way complaining or blaming, but I felt like I had to be independent very early on. Like, I was 4 years old, and if I wanted a bowl of cereal, I had to figure that out myself. There was no one, and so again, not being blameful. Other people had it worse than me, but I had to become independent very early on. By the way, I'm no more creative than anybody else, no more creative than you or anyone else, but I have developed those skills. And so creativity is very much like your weight than your height. Like, I'm 5'5" on a good day, and try as I may, I'm not going to grow a foot by next Tuesday. But my weight I can control based on my habits, my behavior. Creativity is exactly the same. So we're all born with this huge reservoir of creative capacity, and then each of us get to make choices on how much or how little we develop it. So early on it was that, and then I just got after it and started just improvising. Still do the same today.
Playing jazz, figuring it out as you go. Josh, your story, it's so cohesive, but perhaps when you were living it, you didn't say, oh, this makes sense, I'm following that path. No, you were defining it based on where you felt you had to go. And I want to stay on that creativity topic, Josh, because you say in previous interviews that the thing holding us back from unlocking our creativity, it's ultimately fear. Can you unpack that for us? Talk to us about how fear holds these young entrepreneurs, Justin, myself, the thousands of next geners out there listening and watching live. What can they be doing even to combat that fear and be creative?
Well, you're exactly right. So it turns out, and I've done 20 plus years of research on human creativity, fear, not natural talent, fear is the single biggest blocker of creative output. And the thing is, we're all born. The research is so clear that as human beings, we are hardwired to be creative. That's, again, our natural state. But often fear clouds the process. And I always like to say that fear and creativity cannot coexist. So if anyone's a leader and you're building an organization, job number one is to create ideal and safe conditions so your team's creativity can thrive instead of be suppressed. There are a number of things that we can do to get past it, but I just want to quickly say, you're asking about my upbringing. I don't mean to be glib about it, because I know many people have had real struggle and real hardship, and often that builds real character. Again, I don't say this in a blaming way, but we envision people who've had success as having like this real smooth journey and everything was cool. I mean, my first company, I was 20 years old. I had this idea. I called up this mentor of mine, begged for a $1,000 loan, and he said, hey, give me a business plan. And I didn't even know what a business plan was. So I went to the library, I researched what's a business plan. I printed this thing out at Kinko's because I didn't even have like an email at the time. And I mailed it off to my mentor, and I'm waiting for praise and admiration and this loan. Here's what he told me. He said, that's a terrible idea. That's who the hell do you think you are starting a business? You're going to fail. And those words stung, but they stung worse because that was my dad. And by the way, I had a good relationship with him. He passed in 2007. I'm not mad at him, none of that. And he was probably trying to look after his kid, and it came out wrong. But I mean, think about how most of us receive that. It's very discouraging. We're immersed in fear. In my case, I was just too stubborn, and I just saved up some money playing jazz gigs, started the company, and went along. So my only suggestion for you or other entrepreneurs out there is it's never a straight line. It's never all sunny days. There's going to be ups and downs, and the highs feel heroic and the lows feel catastrophic. And I think a lot of it is just building that sense of grit and determination and resilience and tenacity. Fuse that with creativity, and you can't be stopped.
The more that you know about what the journey is going to be like, Josh, the better we're going to be prepared. We're not going to think it's all a smooth ride. So much of what you talk about in your blogs and your books is this value of starting before you're ready. A next gen core value that we like to say is get in the game, just get started. Shout out Brian Andreyko, great podcast, because we always say just get in the game. You're gonna make the mistake. Your idea is gonna be wrong, so you might as well get in the game so we can start figuring out early. So this story about the business plan and the $1,000 loan, that is a clear example of start before you're ready. You said, I'm getting in the game. Help us understand where else you learned that in your career. You started many companies very early in life. Where did you learn this start before you're ready mentality, and how do you continue to carry it with you?
Yeah, so thanks for asking. So my new book, Big Little Breakthroughs, I just came out last week, so I'm really excited about it. For the research, I interviewed I spent over 1,000 hours in research and interviews with CEOs and billionaires and celebrity entrepreneurs and Grammy award-winning musicians, as well as everyday innovators doing just really cool stuff around the world. And what I discovered is that there are some pretty common patterns, common mindsets of the most innovative people. And one of those common mindsets is a core principle called start before you're ready, which is this. Most of us wait. We wait for permission. We wait for someone to tell us what to do. We wait until we think our game plan is bulletproof. But the problem is waiting, there's an inherent risk that we just miss the opportunity altogether, or we just start too late and miss the opportunity, and we're just too far behind. So entrepreneurs generally, as well as innovators around the world, start before they're ready. And the concept is you just get after it. You get started knowing full well that those first few steps and attempts are going to be messy as can be. And you're going to make a bunch of mistakes, and you're not going to have a clear path, but you're going to figure it out as you go. So it's a matter of getting going and finding your way. That happened to me. I learned that back to jazz, playing music. As a working musician trying to make a living playing music, I freelance all the time, and I get a call like, hey, our guitar player got sick and it's 2 days from now, and we're looking for someone that plays a little like heavy metal with some Afro influence, with a little bit of country twang, and can also do some Bob Dylan. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been studying that. Oh yeah, like game on, let's do it. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing at all, but I said, by the time I get to that gig, I'm going to figure it out. And so I think it's a willingness, not thinking that you're going to be perfect at all. It's a knowing for sure that you're going to make mistakes, but the confidence comes in knowing that you're going to figure out how to course correct. The other thing I'll just say quickly about starting before you're ready is, most people think about innovation as you have some magical idea, it launches perfectly as if you were, lightning bolt from the heavens, and then you just let it go into the universe. And when you do that, it feels super risky and out of reach. A better approach to start before you're ready is go after micro innovations or little experiments or prototypes. So in other words, you might have an idea, but it's not fully perfect. Instead of waiting until it's perfect, see if you can test the idea, like in 15 minutes and for $15. And then you do 15 tests and then see which ones merit exploration and which ones you should discard. So if you start and test, think small instead of big, you can sort of de-risk the process and end up at a better outcome.
Unbelievable. Josh Linkner, we're going to link your bio and the book down, Big Little Breakthroughs. What I love most, and Justin and I were just talking about it behind the scenes, all the big stories, they're out there, everybody knows about them, but you focus on, as you said, the other entrepreneurial mindset applications. What Josh is talking about, everybody, he's saying in musician, in business, in life, it's the approach that matters. It's the mentality behind it. And I want to stay on the topic of time, Josh, because this is something that I think in my experience has kept me out of the game. We see young entrepreneurs not entering the game because we think we have to spend, to quote Malcolm Gladwell, those 10,000 hours, right? Getting really great at something, knowing the problem, knowing the issue. But you talk about the 20-hour rule to learn a new habit, to get started. Can you maybe unpack that for our team and show our audience how we can maybe fast forward that a bit and get in the game and get started learning?
Yeah, so Malcolm Gladwell popularized the 10,000-hour rule, and I think it was misconstrued over time, but we sort of think that, gosh, to learn anything new, I got to spend 10,000 hours. Who has 10,000 hours? So that creates like this giant hurdle, and you just say, well, I'll just gravitate to doing nothing. And anytime you're weighing doing something versus nothing, if the doing something is so big and scary and overwhelming and risky, you just gravitate to doing nothing, and no one wants to do that. So there's an author named Josh Kaufman. Of course, I only like people named Josh, obviously, but anyway, Josh Kaufman came up with this idea called the 20-hour rule. It's not that if you want to become a master at something, like the world's #1 symphonic orchestra cellist, but more like if you want to become basic at something, all it really takes is 20 hours of deliberate practice in most things. And when I get into creativity, the good news is this. It's not like we're learning a new language where we have to start from scratch. Creativity, those abilities are innate. Those are inherent in all of us. If you're breathing, you're creative in one way or another. So it's more like reconnecting to the skills that you already have and adding a little bit of technique on top of it. So my point in the book, and I provide the specifics on it, is that 20-hour investment in developing our creative capacity, being better at inventive thinking and creative problem solving, can yield the biggest gain that you can enjoy in the next 12 months. Like, we're all trying to create an edge economically. We're trying to get ahead of our competition. We're trying to drive better outcomes in our family or our health or our careers. And what better way to do that than tapping into this natural resource that we already have? And again, it only takes 20 hours of study.
Josh, so much of this is screaming at our next gen family, get in the game. You don't have to spend your career studying. You don't have to have the right answer. You don't have to have the perfect business plan. Just get started. You're going to learn. And in such a short amount of time, you really can learn so much. And that mindset, frankly, it's a positive mindset. It's one of courage, knowing that there's fear out there, but doing it anyway, feel the fear and do it anyway, starts in the morning. Dylan and I are big believers in the morning routine. We're constantly trying to tinker, hammer away at getting our morning routine better so we can start the day with that attitude. I know that you have this 5-minute morning ritual all about creativity. You talk about it in the book. So unpack it for us. But first, before you get into the 5-minute morning ritual, have you always been a morning person? Have you always had your morning routine like this? Maybe you can give us some context on how you came to know this creative ritual and then unpack it for our next gen fam so they can try it on their own.
Sure. No, I've not always been a morning person. When most of us are teenagers and when we're jazz musicians, I used to play gigs in Miami with the musicians from the Miami Sound Machine, not Gloria, although I've met her, but her side musicians. And like, our gigs would start at 11 p.m. and we'd play till 4 a.m. So, I mean, I was not always a morning person, but to your point, I think we're always trying to learn and grow. One of the phrases that I repeat again and again is, when I was building my company, someday a company will come along and put us out of business. So it might as well be us. And I approach that same thing for myself. Like, someday a version of me is going to come along and put me out of business. Might as well be me. And so my morning ritual, back to your question, has been developed over time. It's still evolving and changing. It's a lot of experimentation, and it may or may not be right for everybody on this call. I'm happy to share it. You're welcome to use any of it. But I think the crucial thing is a small amount of daily practice on something is way more important than giant swings. Like, when I was learning jazz guitar, I could take a killer guitar lesson, the best in the world, and I could practice really hard for 4 hours straight. But if I put the guitar down for 6 months, my playing would be no better. Instead, if I practice for 10 minutes a day consistently, that's what ultimately developed the skill. And the same is true for creativity. So with that in mind, what happened is I developed over time, I'm still tinkering with it, literally 5 minutes. That's it. 5 minutes a day, do it in the mornings, and it just sets me up for a creative day. And I'm happy to share it if you'd like.
Yeah, let's
Please,
do it.
let's dive in. Notepads out.
All right, here we go. Minute number one, again, 5 minutes, so it's going to be fast. Minute number one, I call it the guzzle. And they always say in software engineering, if you want to change the output, you got to change the input. So for me, I spend my first minute guzzling inputs of others. I might watch a live music performance on YouTube. I might read a piece of poetry out loud. I might stare at a painting. But in other words, I just sort of immerse myself in the creative works of others to get my juices flowing. Minute number two, this one I call the highlight reel. The highlight reel, I split this actually into half, so 30-second sprints. First one, like a highlight reel from watching sports? This is me first doing something in the past. So I think back on a time when I, like a good sports highlight reel, really rocked it. And this could be like, maybe I was given a keynote, or maybe I was solving a problem. So I think back in my mind of when did I deliver some really strong creativity? Then the next 30 seconds, I do a forward-looking highlight reel, as if I'm watching a highlight reel from the future. And here I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I maybe in the future I'm doing something really bold and creativity is flowing naturally. There's something about watching a highlight reel of yourself in your own mind, anchored both in the past, showing that it's possible, and anchored in the future, showing that what you can possibly do going forward. I mean, there's just something really cool about those two anchors. So minute number two is a 2-part highlight reel. Minute number three, this one I take an unrelated problem. Think of this as jumping jacks for your creativity. Let's say you pop open the newspaper and you say, all right, what's a problem that you see? First headline, racial injustice in Minneapolis. Okay, so if you said, gosh, I got to solve that problem, yeah, good luck with that, right? But I don't try to do big ideas. I do a rapid fire small ideas. So I might say, what are 15 ways that we could take a teeny bite out of that problem? What about one is having more mixed classrooms as kids so we can build friendships and build more tolerance and empathy and understanding of those that don't look and act like us? Okay, great. Does that idea, by the way, save the world? No, but it's a teeny tiny little something. So all I do is I just pick any newspaper and just start riffing on it. What can I do to take a little teeny chunk out of that idea, out of the problem? It's not designed to generate work product. It's designed to keep my skills sharp. Number 4, I call it the time machine. The time machine is I might envision something I really, really want in the future. Maybe it's 10 years out and I'm ringing the New York Stock Exchange bell. Or maybe it's me performing in Carnegie Hall, or something that I really want. We all want something. And then I just think to myself, okay, if I'm in that state right now, I'm in a time machine, and someone asks me, let's say it's a Wall Street Journal reporter, what percentage of your accomplishment that we're celebrating today was based on you mechanically learning your skills, or what percentage was based on your creativity? My guess is none of us would say, yeah, 99% mechanical and like 0.5% creativity or luck. No way. We'd all give like some pretty big percentage, like 20%, 30% or whatever. The reason I do this is it reminds me of the importance of creativity. It reminds me that if I want to achieve the big things in life, I can't simply rely on what I already know. I have to forge my creativity going forward. So it elevates the critical nature, mission critical nature of it. And finally, last one is I just do a sprint. Now that my ideas are flowing, I just pick any topic in my particular day coming up and just start riffing again, like fast. Like, okay, I'm going to sprint on some ideas. Hey, I got to record a podcast later on. How can I make sure this is awesome? Oh, I could do this. And just go boom, as many as you can go in 1 minute. It's like a flat out sprint. So anyway, all that, even though I explained it, it probably took me 5 minutes to explain it. That happens in 5 minutes. I'm done. And what happens is my day, I've set the foundation. I've put creativity in motion. And like, it could be 12 hours later and I'm still rocking on creativity. So the point isn't that I'm super creative. The point is I rely on a system. I rely on that little ritual. And I hope that folks listening today choose to do the same.
Next Gen fam, Josh is giving you the playbook to big little breakthroughs right here. If I'd say pause, but don't pause yet. Rewatch this, listen in, get those notes out and try it yourself. Reach out to us, tell us how it went. You best believe that Justin and I are going to be giving this a run tomorrow morning and getting in the game. That's the whole key here. Josh, I want to stay on the topic of creativity in the startup workspace, because I think a lot of times, at least for me, I have found, or I thought previously, that creativity and focus did not go together. And I think that's wrong. And I'll let you maybe give it the punchline, but you built 5 companies, sold for $200+ million in exit value. How did you maintain the focus to build an individual project without having a million ideas and crisscrossing paths? How did you approach that idea of really focusing and building something great?
Yeah, that's a really thoughtful question. So creativity is, think about it as a piece of technology, and you can apply that technology in different ways. You can apply it in a very focused manner. You say, okay, I'm going to tackle this particular problem, and you aim it and go real deep on that one thing, or you could like spray it all over the place. And so I think that they're not necessarily conflicting. I think it's more about where you choose to use creativity. I believe that you can use it in the classical sense of growth or product development or marketing, but also in less expected ways. Why not use it for driving efficiency? Why not use it for reducing safety hazards in a factory? Why not use it for improving workflow output and units per whatever on a construction site? So the point is that we can look. I think the first thing is like, what are we trying to accomplish? Are we trying to build a company? Great. Are we trying to raise capital? Great. What is the goal? What's the output? And then how do we aim our creativity as a resource, a natural resource to achieve in the most elegant and effective way? And really in the book, I tried to demystify the creative process. We often think that it's this magical wizard-like effort that 1 out of 1,000 of us are born that way and the rest of us have to suffer. Not at all. It's a practical skill that can be deconstructed and deployed again, on just about any challenge that you might be facing.
Amazing. Josh, in your career, as we're in the 4th quarter of our interview now, I want to be reflective and look back and ask if there were moments where maybe you forgot some of your own advice and you hit that stagnation point. You have built 5 companies. You've sat on at one point or another 80 boards, 10,000 people you've been involved in their hiring, 4 books. So you've been obviously a prolific creator, but many of the next gen entrepreneurs that we work with, they tell us that they hit that point where they kind of forget that they have it in them to create, and they get the fear is overtaking. Has that ever happened to you in this journey? Or maybe how do you make sure that you're taking your own advice and knowing that the fear is there, you're staying in the game? You've gotten in the game, but that you don't fall out of the game, that you stay in the game as well.
Yeah, also an excellent question. Anybody that tells you that they have no fear and they like, that's a bunch of BS. Like the greatest of the great do, and I certainly do too. I spent 1,000 hours working on this book, and there were days I'm like, yeah, man, I'm rocking it out, I'm flowing. And there were other days like, excuse me, I'm like, this is just shit. Like, who's gonna read this? Like, I'm embarrassed to look in the mirror. And I think that all creators have those moments. So the question isn't. I think it's better to actually acknowledge those and say that's part of the human process. That's part of the creative process. There are days when we're flowing and let's capitalize on those. There are days that we're not. To me, I always get back to, is there systems and processes that we can put in place to help us through it? So I do a little thing. There are moments that I'll sit down to write, for example, and I'm just like, yeah, man, I'm rocking. But there are many moments that I don't feel that way. So how do you deal with that? One thing I do is I do this little 15-minute rule. I basically say, okay, I'm going to get started for 15 minutes. I'm going to give it an honest effort. I'm not going to overthink it. I'm not going to judge it. At the end of that 15 minutes, if I'm in the flow, great. If I'm not, I'm going to put it down judgment free. 9 times out of the 10, I hit that 15-minute mark and I'm rolling. And the 1 time out of 10 that I'm not, I don't give myself any grief about it. So I think it's extending the same amount of compassion that we would to a good friend when we have those inevitable moments of doubt and fear and concern and, insecurities, because those happen to us all. So let's acknowledge them. Let's just own it and let's move through it.
I love that. Movement inspires momentum. Get started a little bit, 1%, put the running shoes on, walk outside to the track, and then decide if you want to do the lap. As you said, Josh, 9 times out of 10, you're likely to build that habit, to foster that growth. And that is what counts. Josh, I want to ask you about your investor hat. One of the other hats you've worn in this entrepreneurial journey, 100+ investments that you have made. Obviously, not all moonshot rocket ships, but a lot of great ones in there. But I want to even stay, before we get to the investment action, into your thought process in starting the VC firm. You didn't want to say, okay, let me look at the Silicon Valley investors, the New York City investors, the Miami. No, you said, I'm going to be the one of one in Detroit. What gave you that confidence, and where did that inspiration come from to say, I'm going to be unique, even if it's not the same as good as those great Silicon Valley ones? I'm going to be me and authentically me.
Yeah. So, in 2010, my partners and I had this crazy idea. We're like, what if we started a venture capital fund in downtown Detroit, backing tech entrepreneurs, not manufacturing? And we said, maybe we'll make some money, but more importantly, maybe we can make a difference. So we actually used venture investing as a platform for social change and urban revitalization. We wanted to rebuild Detroit as best we could. And people told us we're nuts. They're like, this is crazy. You can't do this in Detroit. Go to New York, go to Silicon Valley. And so we said, yeah, we're going to do it anyway. And when we started the fund, there was not a single tech startup in the entire 140 square miles of Detroit, Michigan. A few years later, we had 70 tech startups within 1 square block of our building. There's over 1,000 employees in that 1 square block now that are young, vibrant tech workers contributing to the local economy. By the way, I'm in no way taking credit for Detroit's turnaround. This is magical time in Detroit, and I'm a very small piece of that. But it was kind of cool because we challenged conventional wisdom. One thing I've done is a through line throughout my career. Again, by the way, I've made a bunch of mistakes. I'm not the greatest or anything like that, but I always like to consider what's the opposite. In fact, it's a technique that we can use. I call it the judo flip. So in other words, you say, okay, I want to do venture capital. What does everybody else do? Go to San Francisco. What should I do? What's the judo flip? Stay in Detroit. I started a company in 1999 called ePrize. Everybody else was doing interactive advertising. It was like the hottest thing. What's the judo flip? I did interactive promotions. Nobody was doing that, even though it represented a large category of the marketing mix. So I'm a really big oppositional person. I like to look what everybody else is doing and figuring out ways to stand out instead of blend in.
Josh, even just from talking to you in this little time, it's so clear how much energy that you have. You tackle so many different projects. While you're doing this all, though, you are married and you're a father and you're trying to get better at your own skills and, do your music thing and do the startups and do the investing. So I want to talk about your system for balance, harmony, whatever it means. We have a lot of people on Momentum Go, and everybody kind of has a different framework. Some try to be very integrated, some are very compartmentalized, some schedule it all, some are spontaneous. Everybody's got a different approach for how they find balance in making sure that what's important to them is actually made possible and manifested in their life. So you over your long career, you had startups before you were married and had kids. Now you're, the father. How do you think about balancing all these priorities in your life?
It's a really difficult challenge, I think, for anybody, and especially for those that are really driven to accomplish a lot. I've thought about this question a long time. In fact, I wrote a piece a long time ago, got a bunch of criticism on it, that life balance is a myth. And what I meant is that if you really want to achieve greatness in something, it by definition is going to have to come by sacrificing in other things. So when we look at the greats, you look at Beethoven. Beethoven probably wasn't all that well-rounded. He didn't do yoga every third Tuesday. Like he wasn't, in a book club. Like he just did one thing and he did it great and he became Beethoven. So I think what it is more about choices than balance. So how do we want to live our lives? What's our sort of vision board, if you will? And so if we say, okay, look, these are the 6 things that are important to me. I want to be pretty darn good in all 6. Then you're going to have to say, okay, what are the things I'm not going to do? So if, like, for example, I don't have a huge group of friends. I have a small group of really close friends, and I'm really happy with that. But it's at a deliberate expense of other things. I don't go to networking things that often, partly because I don't like it, but partly because I'm making a choice to say no to one thing in order to say yes to something else. So those listening, if you're like, I want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, nothing wrong with that. But what you're doing is you're taking all of your chips, all of your energy and putting it on one thing, probably at the deliberate expense of a lot of other things like your relationships or your health or your faith or your community or whatever else. So the point is, I think we should all choose a formula that's right for us, but let's accept the fact that you can't be a 10 in every aspect of your life. You just can't. All you're going to do is create anxiety and stress. And so each of us has to adjust our board, adjust those dials and knobs according to what you want. And once you do that, and once you set it, recalibrate every 6 months. Awesome. But don't beat yourself up for not doing one thing because you're doing something else that you chose to do. That's what I try to do. It's not always great, but I try.
It's such a powerful example, Josh. And we appreciate the transparency, the authentic nature behind your words. For our entrepreneurs listening, we see the magazine sometimes, we see the storyline and the headline, and we forget all that's behind the scenes. What Josh is talking about, Next Gen Fam, just be aware, make choices, make decisions, say no to other things to say yes to what you choose actively to commit to. And this is advice that we can all apply in our own lens. Josh, as we look toward the end of our interview, one of our favorite questions, and I think in particular now, given how tapped in you are, you have young, as you said, next generation children, you are building businesses actively, you just wrote a book, unbelievable accomplishments left and right. What excites you the most when you think about the next generation of entrepreneurship? What do you have your eye on? What do you think is coming up that our audience should flag and note?
I think it's not about what's the new tech flavor of the week. It's not, what about drones or IoT or whatever else. I think it's more about solving problems in creative ways. And I think the organizations that really will thrive in the future are ones where all people are creators. In other words, you got a group of 1,000 people in a company. You shouldn't be like, the creatives, they sit up on the second floor. It should be like, all 1,000 of us are creative. And I think when we do that, that is what unlocks real sustainable success and possibility. I mean, I just believe there's very few things in life as enriching and rewarding as the expression of creativity, whether you're trying to seize an opportunity or solve a problem. So to me, it's not so much about a particular tech trend or nuanced opportunity, though those come and go. I think it's more about cultivating this superpower that we all have. That's what's exciting to me. As an investor, by the way, when I was pitched ideas, and I sat through 3,000 entrepreneurial pitches, I was deploying millions of dollars and a lot of people wanted capital. For me, it wasn't like, I can do what eBay does, but 2% better. That's sort of a yawn. To me, it was like, is somebody doing something in a bold and creative, a judo flip, different kind of way? And I think that the thing that's exciting to me is this. The COVID pandemic was awful and horrible, and it's just, obviously can't argue with that. But there is, I think, a little bit of silver lining, and that the world has hit a giant reset button. And as we now enter soon into hopefully a post-COVID era, what's happened is that the patterns of the past have been broken. The way we work, the way we sell, the way we interact, the way we lead, the way we laugh, the way we love. And so because those patterns are broken, that creates new opportunity. And what it tells us is that we can no longer simply rely on the models of the past and expect the same results. So to me, one thing that's exciting is that this global reset button that's happening, and it's accelerating the need for innovation, it's accelerating the need for change, and it's accelerating the need for entrepreneurs. Because, maybe there was a business relationship that had 50 years of cobwebs on it. It's hard to break that. But you know what? It's been broken. So now as an entrepreneur, now is our time for a challenger brand. Couldn't be a better time to go out there and do something bold and fresh and new.
And as we like to say, Next Gen Fam, now's the time that everybody has to be thinking like an entrepreneur, being creative wherever you are in your career. And this all comes down to finding those big little breakthroughs. So Josh, tell us a little bit about the book. You teased about it. We talked about some of its lessons. How long have you been working on this, and why are you so excited to finally get out into the world?
Yeah, I'm really pumped about it. And so it's called Big Little Breakthroughs, How Small Everyday Innovations Drive Oversized Results. The cover, it's a little hard to see there, but I borrowed the idea from pointillism. So if you take a simple dot of green and put it on the page, any one of us can do that individual dot. There's nothing magical. But if you put enough dots together, it adds up to a piece of art. And that was the concept of the book cover. But the project itself, it is a 2.5-year project. As mentioned, I spent over 1,000 hours in research and interviews. It's by far the best thing I've written. And I just am excited about it because it doesn't cover Elon Musk. It doesn't cover Netflix because we already know about them. We already know they're innovative. I cover weird stories from all around the world and entrepreneurs doing amazing things and winning against all the odds. And it's a fun read, but I think it's impactful because for personally anyway, when I look at Elon Musk, I'm like, good for him, but it's hard to see myself in that. But when I look at some of the people in this book, I'm like, I could have done that. That's within the grasp of all of us. So this is a book to help democratize creativity and innovation, making it accessible for us all. It's not some elite club that nobody has a membership to. It's for everybody. And that's my real mission in life. I know it sounds like a postcard, but I believe it from my soul. It's like, if I can help everyday people become everyday innovators, the world is just a better place in education and healthcare and environment and everywhere in between. So that's why I wrote the book, is to help, again, everyday people become everyday innovators.
Unbelievable. Josh, the passion, the love, the excitement, it is clear for anybody who's listening, who's seeing you today. Big Little Breakthroughs. We're going to get all the links down below in the show notes and on our channels. It is such an honor to learn from you as you democratize creativity, allowing us to help spread that mission, to create that world we all want. We all share the vision for the entrepreneurial mindset, enabling others to unlock their own greatness through creativity, through ownership, through so much more. And we truly appreciate you coming on Momentum Audio to share your story, Josh.
Oh gosh, what a pleasure. I mean, seriously, you guys are doing amazing things. Thanks for spreading the love. Thanks for spreading positivity and giving people not just excitement, but giving people practical tools that they can harness and deploy in the months and years to come, and in the bad times as well as the good ones. So thanks for doing such great, noble work.
Next Gen fam, this was Josh Linkner, entrepreneur, CEO, author, venture capitalist, and the new author of Big Little Breakthroughs. Josh, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks again.
Y'all,
what a
incredible interview. I love what we talked about at the end there. I think was so true. You have a lot of interviews where it's like you hear about Elon Musk on YouTube and you're like, that's amazing, but how? Josh, like, no, let me break it down. I'm a real guy, and here's my real tips, and here's the real people I've interviewed. Here's my real research of why you don't need to go be blah blah blah. Here's how to do it. He's so authentic.
Don't let that humble nature of Josh's.
Yeah, he's a beast.
He's a beast. He's a beast. Like, it is no misconception. 5-time exit, 200+ million value on the. Unbelievable. And he's telling you, you can do it too. Right? I know when I was getting started, I used to think it was impossible. That's a daunting task. Josh is saying, well, it's tough. You got to put in the work. You got to commit. Small, big, little breakthroughs. That's what it takes. We're going to get that link down. Must read for anybody getting started.
Y'all, Next Gen fam. I mean, this guy's a prolific creator. I think he's 83 boards. He's on 83 boards, 5 companies. Ooh. Incredible. And he's saying you're in the game. Stop waiting. Next Gen, we're begging all of us. Now's the time that we have to be thinking like an entrepreneur and getting in the game. It's advice for us. It's advice for us too. We're not in the game on so many things. We got to get in the game. This was incredible. Huge thank you to the team who made this all possible. I want to give a special shout out to Alicia from 40 for making this happen. Huge thank you to Josh for being here. Josh Linkner, 5 times tech entrepreneur. He's a CEO, author, VC, keynote speaker, and you just watched him on Next Gen HQ's Momentum.
Drop us a note, Next Gen fam. Let us know what your takeaways were from the book. Reach out to Josh and ourselves on social media. And until next time, we'll see you back here live on Next Gen HQ's Momentum Audio. We appreciate you for tuning in. Now that's momentum. See you soon.